today, so we didn't go Trump Lite. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one of these posts covering finance and prop news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, voters booted out Scott Morrison's Conservative government in a shift likely to bring greater action on climate change, women's issues and anti-corruption efforts. Morrison conceded defeat last night and congratulated Albanese on the victory for Labor, which was closing in on a majority in the 151-seat parliament. Now, we still have postal votes coming in, of course, but the current numbers are around this. Labor's won at least 72 seats, compared with 50 for Morrison's National Liberal coalition, according to ABC projections. Independents and third parties have taken 15 so far, while results for the remaining 14 seats are still to be confirmed, and that may take a few days. Albanese is currently 4 seats short of majority, meaning he would need to rely on the Greens or independent MPs to form a minority government. And it's worth remembering that Labor only won about 32% of the primary vote. That's its worst result in decades and the lowest for any incoming government since World War II. The result will likely lead to soul-searching on both sides of the aisle, therefore. So what's next? Well, Albanese will likely be sworn in as Australia's 31st Prime Minister on Monday in Canberra. The nation's new leader faces an immediate foreign policy test as he's going to head off to Tokyo to participate in meetings of the Quad alongside President Joe Biden, Japan's Fumio Kishida and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Frydenberg is in doubt. The Treasurer could be the most prominent MP to fall. Now, he, of course, was widely viewed as a future leader of the Liberal Party, raising new questions about the successor to Morrison, who said he was stepping down as head. Someone who will be very pleased to see the back of Morrison was France's outgoing Foreign Affairs Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian. I can't stop myself from saying that the defeat of Morrison suits me very well, he said, in a swipe at the sudden decision last year to dump a $64 billion French submarine deal. Morrison's actions slowed brutality and cynicism, and I would be even tempted to say a form of notorious incompetence. So, where to from here then, and what does this all really mean? I'm recording this on Sunday morning, and we're still waiting for the postal votes to flow through, so some of the results aren't yet fully anchored. But nevertheless, Labor is likely to form government, whether minority or majority remains to be seen. There are about 71 or 72 seats at the moment. They need 76. It's also worth observing that a lot of the information that's been flowing through has highlighted the dramatic change in the political landscape. Labor will end up with about 1/3 of the votes, but form the largest party. But the non-aligned or independents have taken a very big step up, including the Greens. They'll have about 1/3 of the votes now. That's a very significant change in the landscape, whereas the Liberal Nationals got a bit of a beating. And interestingly, while all of the focus in the media has been on the Liberals, the Nationals also took a step back in the number of seats, even if they continue to hold them. Now, I think there are a number of factors in play here, and they're coming through, by the way, in my surveys too. People are very concerned about the fact that the political parties, particularly the main ones, don't really represent local interests, local needs, and local communities. No surprise then that some of those locally aligned candidates, the independents, were able to take votes from the major parties. In fact, both major parties suffered losses. I do think the question of ScoMo's character and some of the behaviour relating to women also played in, and also the question of climate change and what should be done. But to me, the real issue here is it underscores a substantial change in the weather. The political weather has changed to the effect that now you can't assume just two major parties will battle it out one against the other. The community interests, the locals, the non-aligned, now have a much stronger role to play. That'll also be true in the Senate. And this leaves the door open now to potentially tackling some of the issues, for example, trying to get the clause relating to deposit bail-in removed finally from the ASIC Act. That would be a very good move. As well as a discussion about a federal ICAC, which absolutely should be there. But I also think there's another important point. Many of the voters who went independent and local were women. And that, I think, shows that, particularly on the conservative side of politics, there is a big problem with relationships with women, how they're perceived, and indeed how the campaigns were addressed. ScoMo spends a lot of time with a hard hat and in various industry settings, didn't do so much on the softer side. Interestingly, Labour did. So I guess the bottom line to my mind is, does this make much difference? Well, I have to say that Labour and Liberal Nationals are pretty much aligned when it comes to neoliberalism and the role of business and the role of finance. So there will be some changes at the margin, but I think it's going to be down to what the independents can do. If indeed we end up with a hung parliament and independents have the force of power in the lower house, that could certainly shake things up. But even if Labour has a majority in the lower house, I do think the upper house will be where a lot of the debates will run, and we'll be monitoring those. But I want to suggest to you that this is not just a temporary change, but this is a fundamental shift away from two-party politics, where local members tend to just vote as they're told, to a situation where individual members take more accountability, more responsibility, and more interest in the interests of the local communities. And that's good, because local communities are very diverse. It's one of the things that I see through my surveys. You can't just generalise about the whole of Australia. You need to look. The West is different from the East. For example, one reason why in the West Labour has done very well. It's also interesting to note, of course, that in and around the centres of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, the Greens are also doing quite well as well, and they may indeed have more seats in the lower house. So I think it's quite important to understand how diverse the country is, and hopefully politics will be more aligned to the interests of local people, local communities. That would be a very good thing, except that I still think we have a major problem where the major parties are still very much beholden to big power blocks and big money. But maybe this does signal a change, and maybe it signals that we're not going to follow the Trump route, but rather a very Australian route. And that would be a good thing. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.